Welcome to Summary of the Week, your quick guide to the top headlines. Today is Saturday, September 27th. Here's a recap of some of the major events this week. Last Friday, the EU unveiled its 19th package of sanctions against Russia, targeting energy imports, banks, crypto platforms, military suppliers, and battlefield technology exports. Cutting Russia's energy revenue is one of the EU's top priorities in the new sanctions package, according to EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. Russia's two largest state-controlled oil companies will now be on a full transaction ban, von der Leyen said. Additionally, European authorities have sanctioned another 118 vessels from Russia's so-called shadow fleet, among other measures. Also on Friday, Ukraine's 10th Army Corps warned that Kupyansk, a city in the Kharkiv region bordering parts of the Donetsk region to the east now under Russian occupation, is set to be the next target for Moscow's offensive. It said that Russia has been accumulating troops in surrounding settlements and noted multiple attempts to breach Ukrainian defense lines. The 10th Army Corps also accused Russian troops of committing war crimes, including disguising themselves as civilians during combat, echoing similar claims from other units. Early on Saturday, major European airports including Brussels, Berlin and London Heathrow were hit by a cyber-attack on check-in systems that caused cancellations and long delays for thousands of passengers. UK Chancellor of the Exchequer Rachel Reeves speculated that, quote, hostile states like Russia could be behind such cyber-attacks, saying the UK government and businesses need to step up their efforts to combat the danger. Also on Saturday, Russia launched Intervision, a Cold War-era music contest intended as a rival to Eurovision. Over 20 countries competed for a prize of 30 million rubles, or roughly $360,000. The Kremlin pushed Intervision as a means to lay anti-Western narratives on thick, while cementing new cultural and political alliances and projecting soft power. Organisers emphasised that participants needed to embrace traditional values at the competition, saying it would avoid the, quote, perversions of its Western counterpart, Eurovision. 2 consecutive US representatives in the competition withdrew at the last minute, while no performers from EU member states took part. On Sunday, a UN expert warned in a new report that human rights in Russia have undergone a, quote, seismic decline since the beginning of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, decrying endemic torture and medical professionals participating in the abuse. Over the past 3.5 years, quote, Russian authorities have intensified their use of criminal prosecution, long-term imprisonment, intimidation, torture, and ill treatment to silence opposition to the war, the report read. At an emergency meeting of the UN Security Council on Monday, NATO allies clashed with Russia, accusing Moscow of putting global peace at risk by violating the alliance's airspace in Estonia and Poland. Estonian Foreign Minister Margus Tsahkna called on Russia to, quote, abandon its criminal, neo-colonial and imperial ambitions, while Polish Foreign Minister Radoslaw Sikorski said, we know you don't care for international law, and you are incapable of living in peace with your neighbours. Russia's representative, not to be outdone, denied all allegations of involvement in an incendiary speech, saying Europe is, quote, like an unhinged, paranoid individual, unable to respond to criticism, nor is it able to remember the lessons of history. Late on Monday, air carrier flights in Denmark and Norway were disrupted overnight after unidentified drones were spotted near major airports. Between 2 and 3 large drones were seen flying in the area surrounding Copenhagen Airport, according to authorities. The Kremlin later denied, quote, baseless claims that Russia was behind the drones, but Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen told local media that she could not rule out Russian involvement. In a blistering 56-minute speech on Tuesday to the UN, US President Donald Trump launched a broadside against global institutions, condemning allies and adversaries alike, threatening Russia with a, quote, very strong round of powerful tariffs if it fails to make a deal to end the war. He then pivoted to his European counterparts, accusing them of, quote, embarrassing hypocrisy. He said, they're funding the war against themselves. Who the hell ever heard of that one? Rounding off his forceful assault, he said that European countries were, quote, being ruined by illegal aliens, and claimed that the UN, quote, did not even try to help in any of the 7 conflicts he has repeatedly claimed to have ended throughout his tenure. Also on Tuesday, Trump abruptly reversed course in his public stance on Russia and Ukraine once again. Writing on his Truth Social platform, he praised Zelensky as, quote, a brave man who is putting up one hell of a fight. Russia he provocatively dubbed a paper tiger, saying it had, quote, been fighting aimlessly for 3.5 years, a war that should have taken a real military power less than a week to win. He concluded by saying, quote, I think Ukraine, with the support of the European Union, is in a position to fight and win back all of Ukraine in its original form, cryptically adding that it could, quote, maybe even go further than that. Trump signed off by wishing both countries well. Finally on Tuesday, top US diplomat Marco Rubio issued a veiled warning to Russia at a high-level UN Security Council meeting, saying that the Trump administration's patience is not infinite regarding the war in Ukraine. Emphasizing the staggering human and economic toll, Rubio said the war needs to end and laid out the options for if a peaceful resolution is not pursued, including, quote, additional economic costs on the Russian Federation and the sale of defensive weaponry and potentially offensive weaponry to Ukraine. On Wednesday, the Kremlin reacted to Trump's remarks from the day before, rejecting the claim that Russia is a, quote, paper tiger. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov, speaking to a Russian radio station, said, Russia is in no way a tiger, it's more associated with a bear, and there is no such thing as a paper bear. Of the assertion that Kyiv could recapture lost territory, Peskov said, the assertion that Ukraine can win back something by fighting is mistaken. In his address to the UN General Assembly in New York on Wednesday, Zelensky emphasized the failure of international organizations, including the UN, to address the world's challenges, including upholding peace and international law. He pointed to the international community's previous failures to protect Georgia and Belarus from Russian interference, and warned that the EU must provide more support to Moldova, which will elect a new 101-seat legislature on September 28 in the shadow of an alleged Russian plot to destabilize the country. Also on Wednesday, Ukraine's First Lady Elena Zelenska met US First Lady Melania Trump on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly in New York. Zelenska said that she took the opportunity to express gratitude to Ms. Trump for her support of Ukraine and her public attention to children who have become victims of Russia's war. On Thursday, Ukraine and Syria re-established diplomatic relations. It came 3 years after Kyiv cut ties in protest of Syria recognizing the so-called independence of territories in eastern Ukraine temporarily occupied by Russian forces. The agreement was signed on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly, and Zelensky said that Ukraine is ready to support the Syrian people on the path to stability. Also on Thursday, Zelensky said that he is ready to step down as president after the end of the war, and vowed to ask Ukraine's parliament to organize elections if a ceasefire is reached, despite the country's constitution explicitly banning elections under martial law. Zelensky said that Ukrainians may want a leader with a new mandate to make decisions necessary to secure long-term peace. Overnight on Friday, Denmark's Aalborg airport was temporarily closed after drones were spotted in the airspace, marking the third such incident in a month. Earlier in the week, Denmark had said that recent drone flights over its airports were part of hybrid attacks to create fear, adding that it would acquire new capabilities to intercept such aircraft, as Russia denied all involvement. Thanks for watching this week's Summary of the Week. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you back here next Saturday.